They want love, but love terrifies them. They long for closeness, but closeness feels like danger. You can give them loyalty, patience, and trust, and still they'll recoil. Because for the avoidant, depending on someone, even the one they care about most, feels like surrendering control, and surrender feels like death, where the fear of dependence begins. For the avoidant, the fear of depending on others doesn't start in adulthood. It's not born out of a single bad breakup or one failed friendship. It begins much earlier, in the most formative years, childhood. As children, avoidants often learned a silent rule. Needing others leads to pain. Maybe their parents were emotionally distant. Maybe comfort wasn't given when they cried. Maybe their feelings were minimized, ignored, or even punished. So they began to internalize. If I ask for help, I'll be disappointed. If I show my needs, I'll be shamed. If I lean on someone, I'll be abandoned. And little by little, their nervous system adapted. Not by becoming louder, not by protesting, but by shutting down. Silence became safety. Independence became armor. Imagine a child reaching out for comfort and finding no one there. The brain learns. The heart learns. The body learns. Don't depend. Don't hope. Don't reach out. It's not that they stopped wanting closeness. It's that wanting became too painful. So they built survival around self-reliance. And here's the paradox. This self-reliance, which once kept them safe, becomes the very thing that sabotages love later in life. Dependency, to them, feels like danger, because when they were most vulnerable, dependence led to wounds. Even when they meet someone safe, someone who truly cares, their nervous system remembers. It whispers, "Don't lean in. Don't trust too much. Don't need them. You'll regret it." So they pull back, not because you're unworthy, not because they don't care, but because closeness awakens the old terror of disappointment. This is why you may feel their walls most when you're offering your best. Your kindness, your availability, your support. All the things you think will make them feel safe, sometimes make them retreat. Because to them, receiving from you feels like risk. Risk of debt, risk of loss, risk of being at the mercy of someone else's choices. And that, to an avoidant, is unbearable. But here's the hidden truth. Avoidants don't actually hate dependence. They crave it. They secretly long to rest, to exhale, to feel held. But the longing collides with fear, and fear wins. So when you see them resist closeness, when they withdraw from your care, when they seem cold, even in moments of love, it isn't rejection, it's protection. Protection against a wound they still carry. A wound that says, if I depend on you, I could lose you, and losing you would destroy me. Dependence, for the avoidant, is not a small thing. It's not just leaning on someone. It's opening themselves to the very vulnerability they swore never to feel again. And so they fight it, not with anger, but with distance, with silence, with withdrawal. It looks cold, but it's fear, a fear that was born long before you. Why dependence feels like losing control. For most people, depending on someone feels natural. It feels like comfort. It feels like relief. But for the avoidant, dependence feels like the opposite. It feels like exposure. It feels like losing power. It feels like being trapped. Here's why. As children, they were forced to depend on people who weren't dependable, parents who were distracted, caregivers who were inconsistent, or worse, figures who used love as leverage. So dependence didn't feel safe. It felt like surrendering to someone who might drop them, who might use their vulnerability against them. So they made a vow, I'll never need anyone too much again. Now, fast forward to adulthood. When someone shows up with love, when someone offers care, consistency, and attention, that old vow resurfaces. Because to accept care is to accept risk. Risk of being controlled, risk of being let down, risk of losing freedom. To an avoidant, independence equals safety, and dependence equals captivity. Even simple acts, like accepting a ride, letting someone pay, or admitting they need support, can feel threatening because it touches the wound of being powerless. Think about it. When you rely on someone, you give them power. Power to follow through, or power to fail you. And for the avoidant, that power imbalance feels unbearable. They don't want to be in debt. They don't want to feel owed. They don't want to feel like their well-being hangs in someone else's hands. So they'd rather do it all themselves, even if it's exhausting, even if it's lonely, because self-reliance feels like control, and control feels like survival. This is why many avoidants are high-functioning, independent, hardworking, sometimes even overachievers. They pour themselves into careers, hobbies, routines, not just because they enjoy them, but because these areas let them rely on themselves. It's a shield, a defense, a way of saying, I don't need anyone. I'm fine. But here's the tragedy. Deep down, they do want someone. They want to relax. They want to be held. They want to trust. But the moment they start to lean in, fear rushes in too. Fear whispers, if you depend, you'll be trapped. If you let go, you'll lose yourself. If you trust too much, you'll be hurt again. So they push away the very closeness they crave. Dependence also feels threatening because it blurs identity. For the avoidant, their sense of self has been built around independence. It's their pride, their protection, their safety. To need someone else feels like losing themselves, like erasing the boundaries that keep them safe. So when love demands vulnerability, they resist, not because they don't love you, but because love asks them to give up the one thing that's kept them alive: control. This is why avoidance can look paradoxical. They want intimacy, but only on their terms. They want connection, but with distance. They want love, but without dependence. They crave closeness, yet they fear the cost. And the cost, to them, is freedom. So what happens? They build walls. They create distance. They keep conversations shallow when they sense you leaning too close. It's not because they don't feel. It's because they feel too much and don't trust where those feelings will lead. Dependence, to them, isn't a gift. It's a risk, and risks must be avoided. But here's the deeper truth. Avoidants aren't afraid of you. They're afraid of themselves, of the part of them that longs to depend, and the pain that comes when that longing isn't met. So they armor up. They choose distance over intimacy. They choose control over closeness, because control feels safe, even if it leaves them lonely. And that's why, even with the person they trust the most, dependence feels terrifying. Trust doesn't erase old survival strategies. Love doesn't undo childhood vows overnight. So when they pull back from dependence, it isn't a reflection of you. It's a reflection of a nervous system trained to protect at all costs. Dependence doesn't just mean leaning on you. It means surrendering the one thing they've clung to all their life: self-reliance. And giving that up, even for love, feels like losing everything. How fear of dependence shows up in love. Avoidants don't usually say outright, I'm afraid of depending on you. Instead, their fear leaks out through behavior, through patterns, through the small, silent ways they protect themselves. One of the clearest signs is pulling back the moment things get close. You share something vulnerable. They respond warmly. You feel connected. But then, they disappear. They stop texting. They act distant. It feels like whiplash. But to them, that distance is regulation. It's a way to reset the threat level. to reestablish control. Another way fear shows up is through testing. They might test whether you'll get angry if they take space. They might push you away just to see if you'll come back. They might withhold feelings to see how much you'll give. It's not conscious cruelty. It's survival. They're asking, can I trust you with my dependence? Or will you punish me for it? Sabotage is another form this fear takes. When love starts to feel too good, too safe, too steady, the alarm bells ring. Because safety feels suspicious. Peace feels dangerous. Love feels like a setup. So they create distance where none is needed. They pick fights. They become cold. They withdraw affection, not because they don't care, but because closeness feels like a trap. This is why avoidance can seem contradictory. One day, they're affectionate. The next, they're cold. One moment, they're present. The next, they vanish. It isn't because they're confused about their feelings. It's because they're terrified of the consequences of needing you. Dependence also shows up in subtle, everyday ways. They might refuse to let you help with small things. Carrying groceries, making decisions, planning the future. They insist, I've got it. I'll handle it. I don't need help. And while that looks like confidence, underneath, it's fear. Fear that leaning on you, even a little, will make them vulnerable. Even receiving kindness feels complicated. If you do something generous, they may smile, but inside they're unsettled. Because to accept kindness feels like they now owe you. And owing feels like dependence. And dependence feels like danger. So they downplay your effort, or they act like it didn't matter much. Not because they're ungrateful, but because gratitude feels like exposure. Romantically, this fear shows up in commitment struggles. Commitment means interdependence. It means being woven into someone else's life. It means letting another person matter. And that terrifies the avoidant. Because to let you matter is to give you power. And power feels like the one thing they can't afford to lose. This is why avoidants often appear more comfortable in casual dynamics. Situations where they can stay half in, half out. Where their independence remains untouched. Where no one can really demand more of them. But the moment love deepens, and the possibility of dependence grows, panic sets in. Even in long-term relationships, the fear never fully disappears. It shows up as emotional walls, as compartmentalization, as keeping one foot out the door, even if the other foot is planted firmly with you. They might be physically present, but emotionally, they keep a safe distance, not because they don't love you, but because dependence still feels like a threat. And this fear doesn't just affect romantic love. It seeps into friendships, family, even work. They hesitate to ask for help from colleagues. They feel guilty leaning on friends. They struggle to show weakness, even with family, because the same rule applies everywhere. If I depend, I lose control. Here's the painful paradox. The avoidance fear of dependence often creates the very loneliness they dread. They push people away, but ache when no one's there. They reject support, but quietly long for it. They act self-sufficient, but crave the safety of being held. It's a cycle, a trap, a survival strategy that keeps them safe, but starved. In relationships, this cycle often leaves the partner feeling confused. They wonder, am I doing something wrong? Do they even love me? Why do they run when I get close? The truth is, it's not about you. It's about the avoidance wiring, their nervous system, their vow to survive through independence. And unless they begin to rewrite that wiring, the cycle repeats. The avoidance fear of dependence isn't always loud. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. It's the small pauses before accepting help. The hesitation to say, I need you. The subtle retreat after moments of closeness. But whether loud or quiet, the fear is always there, shaping how they love and how they let themselves be loved. And here's the truth. Their fear of dependence doesn't mean they're incapable of love. It means they love cautiously. They love with armor. They love while fighting the ghosts of the past. They want closeness, but dependence feels like surrender, and surrender still feels like danger. When care feels like a threat. To most people, kindness feels safe. Reassurance feels comforting. Support feels grounding. But to the avoidant, these same things can feel suffocating, overwhelming, even threatening. When you offer them care, their body doesn't always register it as love. It registers it as pressure, as expectation, as a trap, because underneath, they carry an old association. Care means I owe. Closeness means I'm trapped. Love means I lose myself. So when you bring tenderness, they don't always soften. Sometimes they tense. Sometimes they retreat. Sometimes they even push you away. Not because they hate kindness, but because kindness exposes them. It highlights the very thing they've spent years hiding. Their longing, their need, their hunger for closeness. For the avoidant, kindness cuts deep. It whispers, "You don't have to be alone." But to believe that feels terrifying. Because if they let themselves lean in, what if it's taken away? What if you change your mind? What if their dependence becomes a burden? The risk feels unbearable. So instead of relaxing into your love, they might distance themselves. They might downplay what you do. They might even act annoyed, as if your care is too much. It's not annoyance with you. It's fear of what your kindness asks of them. Think about this. For someone who grew up learning, that dependence equals danger. Kindness doesn't feel neutral. It feels loaded, because kindness implies connection. Connection implies need, and need feels like weakness. So even your love can feel like pressure. This is why avoidants often respond to care with mixed signals. You plan something thoughtful. They smile, but seem distant. You offer to help. They insist, "I've got it." You reassure them of your love. They change the subject. To them, your care is both a lifeline and a weight, something they secretly crave, but don't know how to hold without fear. At their core, avoidants fear that accepting your kindness will cost them, that if they let you care for them, you'll eventually demand something back. You'll expect them to open up, to rely on you, to let you in. And that expectation feels unbearable because it threatens the fragile independence they've built their whole identity around. Sometimes, they even sabotage kindness before it lands. They dismiss compliments. They reject offers of help. They shut down when you try to comfort them. It looks cold, but underneath it's panic. Because to receive kindness means they're no longer completely self-contained. It means admitting they need, and need feels like danger. The irony is heartbreaking. What they push away is exactly what they long for. They want to feel safe in your arms. They want to know they can lean on you. They want to be reminded they're not alone. But when those moments come, fear hijacks the system, and instead of opening up, they retreat. This creates a painful cycle. You offer more care, hoping to break through the wall. They resist harder, trying to protect themselves from needing it. You feel rejected. They feel pressured, and the distance grows. Here's the truth. For the avoidant, love is not simple. Love is coated with danger. Closeness feels costly. Dependence feels risky. So even when you're giving the best of yourself, they may not know how to receive it. But don't mistake their struggle for lack of feeling. They do care. They do love. They do want you close. They just want it without the risk, without the fear, without the surrender. And that, of course, isn't possible. Because love always involves risk. Love always requires some surrender. For the avoidant, then, the journey isn't about refusing love forever. It's about learning to sit with kindness, without bolting, without interpreting it as a trap, to slowly rewire the body's alarm system so that care feels safe again. And here's the quiet hope. Every time they experience kindness that doesn't demand, love that doesn't trap, support that doesn't shame, the old associations weaken. Little by little, they learn that dependence doesn't have to mean danger, that closeness doesn't have to end in pain, that your love can be held without losing themselves in the process. The path to real safety. For the avoidant, safety was never found in closeness. Safety was in the distance. Safety was in self-reliance. Safety was in never needing anyone too much. But here's the paradox. The very strategies that once protected them are the same ones that keep them from the love they long for. The path forward is not about shaming the avoidant, not about forcing them to open up, not about demanding they depend. It's about helping them discover something new. That dependence doesn't have to mean weakness. That closeness doesn't have to equal loss. That needing can actually lead to more freedom, not less. The first step is awareness. Avoidants must begin to see that their instinct to retreat isn't a choice made in the present, but a survival strategy wired in the past. It's not rejection of you, it's protection of themselves. And when they finally recognize this, a door cracks open, a possibility begins to form. The second step is safety. Avoidants don't need constant pressure. They need proof. Proof that when they come close, you don't consume them. Proof that when they express a need, you don't shame them. Proof that love can hold them without demanding they surrender their independence. And this proof isn't given once. It's given over time, through consistency, through presence, through showing that love doesn't have to wound. Every moment of patience rewrites the old script. Every act of care without expectation chips away at fear. Slowly, their nervous system begins to settle. Slowly, dependence stops feeling like danger and starts feeling like connection. The third step is choice. Because no one can force the avoidant into vulnerability. They must choose it. They must reach the point where loneliness weighs heavier than fear, where self-reliance feels more like a cage than freedom, where their hunger for closeness finally outruns the terror of it. And when that moment comes, they open, sometimes quietly, sometimes with trembling hands. But they open, and this opening is sacred, because for the avoidant, letting someone in isn't small. It's monumental. It's the undoing of years of survival. It's saying, I will risk the thing I fear most, because I want love more than I want safety. This is the path to real safety. Not the safety of walls, not the safety of silence, not the safety of never needing anyone, but the safety of knowing you can be seen and still be held. The safety of leaning in and finding you're not abandoned. The safety of saying, I need you, and realizing the world doesn't collapse. And when avoidants reach this place, love becomes something entirely different. It's no longer a threat. It's no longer a trap. It's no longer a risk too heavy to carry. It becomes what it was always meant to be: a refuge, a home, a safe place to rest. But this journey isn't just about avoidance. It's about all of us, because each of us has a part of us that fears closeness. Each of us has learned at some point that love can hurt, that dependence can wound, that trust can break. And each of us must decide, do we build walls to protect ourselves, or do we risk opening, knowing love is always worth the gamble? If you love an avoidant, remember this: your kindness may feel like pressure to them, but that doesn't mean it isn't reaching them. Your patience may go unnoticed, but that doesn't mean it isn't softening something inside. Your consistency may feel unthanked, but that doesn't mean it isn't building safety. Love works slowly on the avoidant heart, but it does work. And if you are the avoidant, this is for you. Your self-reliance is not a flaw. It was brilliance. It was how you survived what once felt unbearable. But you don't have to live in survival forever. You don't have to keep love at arm's length. You don't have to fear being cared for. You can rewrite the story. You can learn that depending doesn't destroy you. You can discover that closeness doesn't erase you. And you deserve that kind of love. The kind that doesn't demand you shrink or disappear, but invites you to be fully yourself. This is the truth at the heart of it all. Avoidants don't fear love. They fear the cost of love. They fear that depending will mean losing. But when love is safe, when love is steady, when love doesn't punish need, they discover something life-changing. That true dependence doesn't weaken. It strengthens. Because the strongest kind of freedom is the one you don't have to carry alone. If this spoke to you, whether you've loved an avoidant or you've been one yourself, remember this. Healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in connection. It happens when we risk letting others in, even just a little. So share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because love grows stronger when we stop hiding the parts of us that are most afraid of it.